Welcome. My name is Tim Moynihan. We hope to keep the momentum going from the this morning's sessions. They were actually fascinating to listen to, particularly in light of the pandemic going on and some of the technology and things happening in the commercial real estate space. It was really interesting to hear many of the technologies that are being considered, the new normals that are being discussed as landlords and commercial real estate folks are looking to open up. And some of the things we talked about this morning regarded CBRS, private LTE. There was talk this morning of sensors, healthcare sensors, occupancy sensors, location-based sensoring, and advisories and analysis around that. Environmental sensors, energy sensors. So this panel hopes to continue the momentum around some of these topics. We've got a very illustrious panel from infrastructure providers to financial providers, things like that. So we really want to talk around now is around some of the infrastructure, how to finance that, how to bring it in, how to install it, how to really get going from both a financial and business point of view to bring some of these technologies to bear in our new normal. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to let each of the panelists introduce themselves a little bit, talk for a minute or so about their company, and I've asked them before the webinar here to talk a little bit about how what they are doing, their company is doing, really impacts the business side of wireless infrastructure, technology, and things like that. So why don't we kick it off with Andy, and then we'll just go around.
Great, thanks, Tim. And hope everyone's doing well out there. This is my first time I've ever done a virtual panel like this at a conference. And first and foremost, thank everyone for joining today and hope everyone's staying safe and healthy out there. My name is Andy Grapkowski, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Strategy, Corporate Development, and Mergers and Acquisitions for Diamond Communications. Diamond is a telecom infrastructure fund, privately held, based in New Jersey. We started out primarily doing outdoor macro towers, both acquiring towers, building towers, and operating towers. We also have a site management business, which led us into the in-building wireless space, which we started a unit last year called Diamond Mobile Solutions, where we work with real estate customers to help design in-building wireless infrastructure solutions from them, all the way from design, installation, financing, service, and maintenance on an ongoing basis. So it's a relatively new area, but growing rapidly. And given all the things going on in the world, we see great opportunities both now and coming out of this pandemic crisis for the in-building space.
Thanks, Andy. Tom?
So thank you, my fellow panelists, for allowing me to join you guys. And Tim, thanks for the work putting this together. And I want to give a shout out to Rich and his team with Connected Real Estate for putting this whole this whole virtual show together. And like Andy, this is my first panel joining from a virtual perspective. So looking forward to maybe this being the new normal going forward. But my role with IP Access is business development for North America. IP Access, in short, has been in the small cell space for over 17 years. And over time, have got probably 2 million plus deployments with U.S. carriers. We've deployed small cell solutions with probably over 100 carriers worldwide. Our organization is based out of the UK, but have presence in most all continents. But specific to what we're focused on here in Connected Real Estate, most of what we're working on here in the US is around CBRS and what our capabilities are there. And we try and break it down into a very small, or what I call digestible components. There's what we call the consumption model of how people can buy this. Because there seems to be a lot of moving parts when you start talking about the technology of what we provide. But predominantly, we've been a hardware company in the past, and we're evolving from that into all the way into the service provider arena. So for the past several years in other countries, we have deployed private LTE, which really is what CBRS is, and worked with, I'm going to say, the majority of EPC organizations that are out there, and had many successful deployments with and partnerships with those, and then with the integration of the SaaS providers here that really authenticate the users on the CBRS bands. What we've tried to do is break it down into a hosted or a managed service provider. So as IP access has evolved, we're moving from not only providing the hardware and software-based solutions, but providing a managed service in this space as well. And then, really looking forward in this session, Tim, to talking about the various ways that the real estate folks can not only consume it, but buy it, and talk about the financing options of how we proceed down that market.
Hey, Tom, thanks. You used a couple terms there we'll circle back to, and that'll be good as we talk about some of these topics. So thanks, Tom. Greg?
Hey there, thanks, Tim, and thanks to Rich and the team for putting this together. And sounds like we're having a really good turnout and a lot of great sessions prior to this, and then also to follow up on. So I look forward to listening in on more of the sessions. And so yeah, first panel like this, and I'm sure there'll be more to come like this as we leverage technology. And hope everybody's safe and healthy out there. I'm with ExteNet Systems. I'm the Senior Vice President for the Real Estate business unit. That includes commercial real estate, all of the various verticals within real estate, including sports and entertainment. The company's focus, taking a step backwards, is we're a neutral infrastructure provider, I would say, focused on supporting mobile network operator coverage solutions that then bleeds into more of the infrastructure as you move into the building. We focus a lot on the fiber infrastructure in the building as well, as we maintain a neutral focus on that. The infrastructure that we look to put in the buildings can support various solutions. We've been doing it for a long time. We've got probably over 200 some deployments in various venues and buildings throughout the United States. We also have a very robust 25,000 plus node deployment on the outdoor side for small cells. So we see the industry and working with the mobile network operators from the inside out and the outside in, and how that all works together. As we look deeper into the infrastructure and the deployment of a common infrastructure to support any various types of mobile coverage solutions to support either the demand coming from a mobile network operator or a demand coming from a business or a building owner or a large tenant being driven, we want to make sure that we focus on an infrastructure that not only supports the current needs, but as we talked throughout today and what you've heard earlier, those, that infrastructure that we put in those buildings, fiber-based, is robust enough and scalable enough to support future services. In addition to managing access to the tenants, meet me rooms, and managing that part of the business for the building owner as well, to help drive efficiencies, common platforms, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a little bit about what ExteNet does. So looking forward to having a great conversation today. Now we can help real estate, leverage these things up.
Thanks, Greg. Bob?
Thanks, Tim. I'd like to say thank you to Connected Real Estate for putting this on. I think this is a fantastic event. It's unanimous. This is my first virtual panel, as all of our other speakers on this panel. So I'm hoping that this isn't the new normal, because I do appreciate the face-to-face contact and relationship building directly with people, but I do see the value in this as well. My role is Director of Carrier Markets for Baicells. Baicells is a manufacturer of LTE small cells and 5G NR small cells, both outdoor and in building. Similar to Tom's company, we are in several global networks. We are advancing our software capabilities, our services capabilities, but our core business is on the hardware side to date. Our founder, Lixin Sun, started our company several years ago with the idea of LTE as easy as Wi-Fi, because we really believed that the path forward was going to be simplification. In the past, macro networks and the costs that go into deployment, he really believed that there was a better way, a simpler way to do this. And we've proven that over our now 6 years in business. And we are in many global carrier networks and they're in building deployments. We're also exhibiting on this virtual trade show. So visit our website if you want further information on the products that we offer. But we do have both outdoor and indoor small cells and 5G NR radios available today, and more on our roadmap.
Thanks, Bob. All right, so we wanted to start off with the assumption that we all agree that comms infrastructure and cellular connectivity is super important in buildings, probably even more so given the environment we're in today and as we begin to emerge out of it. So I'd like to ask each of the panelists a little bit about their experience and what they've observed and what they're thinking about going forward as it relates to the drivers and inhibitors for investment. Is it a strict ROI model? How are the consumption models or the deployment models affecting financing? Is it an ROI type of calculation, financial calculation? So I'd really like to talk about the financing options vis-a-vis the consumption model, the deployment models, about how this is as we look into the future, as we go forward through the pandemic here. So I'm gonna ask Andy to kick it off here, and he can talk a little bit about this, and then we'll go around.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Tim. And I think the financing options are continually evolving for the in-building wireless space. Traditionally, one of the ways that some of the larger venues were getting funded were through carrier contributions and carrier rent payments to help fund systems and help larger building owners get those funded. As the model has evolved a little bit, and it depends on what type of real estate we're talking about, the carriers have been reluctant to fund all of the buildings for a variety of reasons, and a lot more of those payments have had to come from either real estate owners or neutral host providers like ourselves, like Greg and his team at ExteNet, that will fund and install these systems and help develop other business models out of that. The way that we really got into the business was seeing a lot of DAS systems that had been deployed by real estate owners where they couldn't get carrier connection. And through our relationships with the MNOs, we've been able to develop a process and develop a structure where we can get the carriers to connect into the building and help the building owners figure out funding models and ways to take advantage of that. And that usually involves some sort of managed service and some sort of evolving service that you can provide to your tenants, either through additional charges for your tenants, or in a lot of cases, tenants are starting to come and look for other capabilities that they want to buy from the building owner, whether that be fiber connectivity, whether that be building applications and management systems that some of the other panelists were talking about. And so I think a lot of those newer business models are still evolving as we speak. And that's one of the things that we try to do, is work with our real estate partners to not only be able to bring the signal source in and connect to the right system, depending upon the use case, but then develop business cases around how they can monetize those systems and make money off those systems with their tenants. And that ROI case really varies depending upon what type of building we're talking about, whether that be hospitality, retail, hospitals, multifamily apartments. Each building has its own particular use cases and ROI model, and we try to help our customers figure that out in the best way.
Great, thanks, Andy. And Greg, I want to ask you as a follow-up to Andy's comments about ExteNet provides backbone services and all the services that can possibly extend off of it. What kind of financing models, what kind of financial considerations, and what are some of the inhibitors you're seeing today and as we look into the future?
Well, in a lot of cases, if you look backwards in time, right, mobile network operators were funding a lot of these systems, and I think the whole commercial real estate industry kind of got used to that, or it was great for them, created value, and then capital markets, the capital kind of slowed up, and mobile network operators started to feel like, hey, we're adding value to the buildings, and we're not getting the return that we want out of this, and so it's kind of pivoted. We're more than willing to, and then we're out there talking to the building owners now about putting our capital to work in creative ways that works within their business model. Whether it's, do they have some capital now that they want to invest in it, or do they have an OpEx model? Is there a way for them to recoup that revenue that they're or that OpEx that they're spending with us? What is it that they really need? So it really kind of starts with having those conversations and trying to really understand what's the pain point that you're solving for. Is it your tenants? Is it a specific tenant that needs to just make phone calls, or do they have applications that are driving higher use? Are there certain carriers that you prefer over others? What is your roadmap from a technology perspective when you're talking to building owners? Is there something in play for private LTEs and 5G? What does that mean to you guys? Is it relevant now, or is it something that's 2 to 3 years down the road? All those things kind of play into, as you listen to the building owners who really don't want to, spend this money. No one wants to spend the money, but there's hybrid capital contributions now being discussed where everybody is chipping in and having skin in the game. The building owner may be required or need to put some of the money in to help fund it along with the mobile network operators. But all those questions and all those items need to be, part of the conversation in order to determine what is the right solution for today, and how do I facilitate, a roadmap with an infrastructure that gets you to where you want to be or you're thinking about down the road. When you get into IoT and other things, the common infrastructure that we want to put in that building, whether it just supports a system for phone calls, will it support 5G? Will it support IoT applications? Will it support BMS? What we look at is a common infrastructure, and also, wrapping in the meet me room if we need to with regards to facilitating that, if there's compute that they want to put within the building itself. So a lot of that stuff, and then leveraging our capital to say, okay, we can bundle all this stuff up and we can finance it, or we can actually provide you a service for a fixed period of time and treat it that way. And we can do a mixture of upfront capital contributions and then monthly recurring fees. So we really try to be as flexible as we can based on the situation.
Okay, great. So what I'm hearing from both of you is it depends. It depends into
Yep.
what the goals are of that specific building, the tenants, and what the building owner or whoever's making the decision needs to do to get this technology and solutions moving
And
forward.
each vertical is different, as you mentioned. Healthcare, hospitality, the solutions and the needs may differ. The stage in their building also, if it's coming out of the ground, or it's a renovation, or if it's a new tenant is coming in and driving a need, and they have to react to that. It could be a partial coverage solution in the building that leads to a full coverage solution.
Okay, great. We've got a couple questions coming in, but I want to ask Tom and Bob to comment, particularly around their areas of expertise: private LTE, CBRS, indoor, outdoor, and some of these kind of things. Tom, you mentioned the word SaaS. People may not know EPC and some of these kind of things. So I'm going to ask you, Tom, and Bob, and then we'll ask Bob too. Just kind of comment on what your experience has been as these kind of more sophisticated deployments are beginning to happen, particularly with, again, additional providers, SaaS providers, EPC providers. And so, Tom, let's get to define some of those terms first, and then we can move forward.
Well, I probably better leave the term definition to Bob, because based on our prep session, I think Bob's probably a little more technically astute than I am. But at the end of the day, you've got three basic components if you're talking about CBRS. You've got the SaaS, which really works, you know, and here again, I'm not going to make this very technical, but it serves as an authentication layer between three different types of users that you will see accessing the CBRS spectrum, right? You heard mentioned in the earlier talks today that the DoD operates, you know, very small space in some certain areas of the country where naval operations reserve the right to really trump or what we refer to in the space as operate in the incumbent space. And then there's the PAL licensing portion of that spectrum that'll come up for auction that I believe has been moved into July of this summer. And then you've got the general users is the baseline that I think John Gilbert was referencing in his chat earlier today at the first panel session. But really all it is an authentication layer to a private LTE platform. And the EPC really works in a very simplified text as the brains or the operation that allows the LTE platform or the cellular platform to operate in and of its presence. And I'm not going to get any more complicated than that. But as it relates to, I think, the people that will be watching or listening into this webinar, the key things that I think Andy and Greg both spent on, and then you narrowed down to it depends. You know, I spent 25 years in the cable space on the commercial side, and I don't think I ever saw two commercial builds into real estate properties that looked the same. They all had their specific nuances. I think, Greg, you mentioned it depends on the vertical markets that they go into. And what we're trying to do, or what we're seeing in the space as it relates specifically, Tim, to CBRS, is really two main items. Is one, how do I consume it? In other words, what are my options of deploying that technology? And I believe that depends, or that then will dictate some of the financial structure of how those deals go down, right? So for large enterprise users, or for people that come with fairly peaked capital budgets, and they have the internal resources that understand how to manage private cellular platforms, they could do what we call an on-premise solution, where that's a wholly owned, privately managed deployment. There could be a hybrid solution where what we say, there could be the radio devices that reside on the customer prem or inside the real estate facilities itself. And in a case like a Rudin management that they were talking about earlier today, where they're using it for utilities monitoring and so forth, they may want the data there to be able to reside on the customer prem. But the absolute management of that cellular platform might reside outside that building, and in which case we call that a hybrid type environment. And then there's the fully hosted, where they want all the benefits, or the end user could want all the benefits of having a private LTE network, but don't want any of the headaches of managing the cellular platform or the data pieces itself. And they just want a pane of glass and say, I just want it to work. In some cases, like a simple Wi-Fi solution, just with some more robust qualities to it. And depending upon which one of those, what we call consumption models, that a real estate operator might choose to select, then that starts beginning to structure financially how that deal may need to be put together, right? If there's capital involved, or depending upon how that company operates, does it need to be, I believe, both Andy and Greg mentioned, you know, an operating structure where it's literally just a leased environment, or it could be a deal where you buy down part of it with capital. But what we're trying to do is look at it and be as flexible and try and cater to if it's a fully capitalized deal, we want to be there for that customer and end user there. And if this needs to be a fully hosted model, to where it just blends into a monthly operating budget, we want to be able to be there and help support that, and then provide all aspects of what comes in with managing a private LTE environment.
Great, Tom. Thanks.
Yep.
Bob?
Thanks, Tom. Actually, as you know, Tom was kind of talking about the CBRS and the various deployment models about that. I kind of want to take a step backwards before we take 2 steps forward and ask why would we do that? Why are we looking at CBRS? And one of the main drivers, I believe, is as Greg mentioned, the cost of deployment for in building, and you're looking at your cost models. The carriers have kind of backed away and putting the onus on the venue operators to fund this themselves. And as they're looking at DAS deployments at an average of $2 a square foot to deploy within their buildings, we're also seeing a lot of orphan DAS networks out there. So a network operator might deploy, or a venue owner may deploy a DAS system within their venue with the expectation that they've got the contract with 1 to 4 of the major carriers, and they either don't get that contract or they lost the contract, and then they've got an orphan DAS system that they've spent quite a bit of money on. Cost models that I've seen to deploy in CBRS are about half that, more like $1 per square foot for deployment. So when we start looking at CBRS, none of the network operators have a common frequency. They each have their own frequencies. So when you're building for a particular carrier, you've got to build for that particular carrier frequency. But now in these models that Tom was talking about, the neutral host option, CBRS is seen as a potential common carrier frequency where you can build one of these cost models, deployment models, where you can potentially have a roaming agreement with one of the carriers, or have your own private network, or however you want to design it. There's now other options as a common frequency that can be utilized between all carriers rather than building for one in particular. So then, moving forward to the CBRS deployment and financing of what that looks like, part of that to potentially even reduce that cost from the $1 per square foot, there's a model of what they call a brownfield deployment. A lot of these in-building networks already have Wi-Fi deployed. And a lot of that infrastructure, the fiber, the IP cabling, et cetera, power, all of this has already been run to support the Wi-Fi. And LTE, CBRS LTE can simply be added as an overlay to that existing infrastructure to further reduce that cost of deployment for CBRS LTE.
Okay, thanks, Bob. I'm going to take a pause here, and we've got a number of questions have come in, so we'll just take them as they come in here, and then we'll proceed from there. The first one's from John F. I'm going to kind of combine a couple of his questions here. Local jurisdictions are requiring property owners to fund and install public safety coverage. Is this impacting the funding model? And second part of the question is, are opportunities to leverage this infrastructure for other purposes like commercial wireless? And any impact from the recent FCC actions on rooftops. So somebody want to address that one?
Sure, I can start, and then Greg and others can jump in probably. So on the public safety side, that's right, a lot of jurisdictions are requiring public safety systems, and we've installed several public safety systems alongside in-building DAS systems. And there are cost savings that you can have doing those together, as you can with Wi-Fi on the labor and the installation cost side of things. With respect to public safety in particular, we usually advise running that as a separate system from the actual DAS system that will run the enterprise IT and other carrier signals. So they are separate from that perspective, but doing it together and having it be a requirement does bring down the cost of the the carrier signal side, the DAS side, and I'm sure we'll come back to this in a little bit, but on the CBRS side, that's, as Bob mentioned, CBRS is really a frequency that everyone can use, and it's particularly helpful for in-building applications because there will likely be little interference if you're the only one using that frequency inside your building. And it opens up a lot of options, both from a privacy perspective, from a security perspective, and from a data collection perspective that allows the real estate owner to have a lot more control over who's in the building and what's going on in that building. And so that's where we really see a lot of the more interesting capabilities to work with our real estate partners to develop monetization strategies around achieving their objectives on security and privacy, and using that data to better manage their building and provide a better customer and tenant experience.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else want to comment on the public safety aspect of things? Okay, I've got another question. This one's for Greg. Actually, two parts, Greg. One, does ExteNet have arrangements in place with the carriers for users on private LTE CBRS networks to roam onto the carrier network? I'll come to the next one afterwards. That's kind of a mouthful there. So
Yeah,
how does that work? How does that work? Do you guys work on the arrangements? How does that all come together in arrangements with the carriers?
We've got a relationship with Federated. Now we don't have roaming agreements, shall we say, with the carriers, formalized ones today. I would probably defer that to a conversation with our CTO organization right now. A lot of that stuff's probably confidential, as it is with other competitors in our space, as to exactly where we are on the status of that. I will say that we are having, I would say, proof of concepts, or we're actually conducting trials in various verticals with regards to CBRS private LTE applications in manufacturing and sports and entertainment. So we've got it deployed already, and then also in rural areas. So we do have that more of from an infrastructure play and in the private place outside of roaming agreements.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Greg. Here's another question that came in. So I'm going to kind of look at Tom and Bob to kind of think about this one. Have the carriers agreed to join neutral host CBRS systems? There's a lot of talk, but I've yet to hear the carriers are participating. So give us the real deal. What's going on?
Bob, I don't know what you've seen or guys, but I've heard of, depending upon who the neutral host is, in conversations that we've had, is really dictating how far down that road that they've been, right? It's literally a case-by-case basis for the conversations we've had.
I'd say ditto to what Tom said. It's still kind of in the early phases. The carriers are talking about their own CBRS deployments and also, you know, potential roaming. But until it's built, it's working, and widely adopted, we won't really see much further.
All right, thanks, guys. Another question for Greg. Greg, are new buildings, new construction projects, a focus of ExteNet, or are you guys focusing on existing structures? For example, a new office tower is going in Philly at 222 Market Street, which there hasn't been one since the Comcast building. Or would a structure like this already have an in-building factored into its design? So can you talk a little bit about new versus existing design and some of the considerations around that?
Yeah, we are not, we don't discriminate between the two. We'll talk to new, we'll talk to renovation, and we talk to existing. So hopefully that answers that question. But we definitely enjoy new because that allows us to get in there and offer up a single common infrastructure fiber backbone in there that can be leveraged by multiple different partners of the commercial real estate building owner, whether that be security, like I said before, BMS, the wireless coverage solutions, also provides flexibility to the mobile network operators as to what they want to deploy in there as well. So you have a lot, I think sometimes you have a lot more options because you're coming in scratch, white canvas, and we can parlay other things into that as well that, that we have expertise in. With regards to Philadelphia, I'm hoping to get a text message from one of my sales guys up in the Northeast to tell me that they're all over this. So thanks for the lead. Yeah, we have a presence in Philadelphia. We've got multiple buildings there in service today, and actually deploying in some additional buildings there. So I can't speak specifically to this particular building. We may already be talking to it.
Great. Thanks, Greg. Andy, I want to follow up on this question with you too. Is there any interesting aspects of a new versus existing build out and some of the financing options related to that?
Yeah, I mean, we, similar to Greg, we work with both new buildings and existing buildings. I think on the newer buildings, as Greg pointed out, the earlier you could get involved, the better, because you can design a comprehensive communications infrastructure plan really from the get-go that can be more efficiently installed, especially if you can get out ahead of some of the other construction elements. The sooner you get involved in new construction, the more cost effective it can be for the real estate owner. So we actually like new construction and have an active calling plan, trying to get in front of builders as soon as possible, and think that does reduce the ultimate cost of putting the system in. The sooner you can be part of that construction planning.
Great. All right, we've got another question from Dean. So here's Dean's question. How do you see the future of vRAN/Open RAN for in-building wireless? Will we move away from the standalone small cell CBSDS and towards a more disaggregated model? Could we see versions of indoor 5G neutral host where the signal source is each carrier's virtual CU loaded on a white box server? So I think the question is really around, are we going to see a more disaggregated model instead of just one or two companies kind of getting together and providing all the solution? Are we going to have a more open model where best of class, best of breed network elements are brought together to address and frankly a less proprietary model than it is today? So how do you guys, how do you see that?
The short answer to that question, but we are going to see both. Of course, we're going to continue to deploy infrastructure as we do today, but the Open RAN model is gaining momentum, and that the idea of commoditizing and bringing down those costs is very attractive, and it is kind of the basis for 5G. Most 5G architectures are carrying that similar platform. So as we look at some of those deployment scenarios, deploying an LTE O-RAN solution actually makes the migration to 5G simpler.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna take a stab at addressing Dean's comments too. Frankly, I think a lot of the times this industry, we're moving forward, we're dealing with the virus and things, but from a technology point of view, to really accelerate this industry, to really get it going quicker, I think we need open platform elements running on powerful, off the shelf as possible servers and things like that. Maybe it's from my days at Intel, but I'm a believer in this. And I think it is truly the way that this industry to grow is going to have to move forward in a more open, flexible model with best of breed elements working together, and really move away from some of the proprietary things. So anyway, that's kind of my 2 cents on it. Let's see, got a couple more questions in. So can each of the panelists talk about, do you design or build the complete communication system, including the cabling infrastructure, maybe each of you could talk a little bit about, how far you go from design, install, how that kind of works. Do you do it? Do your partners do it? And then Andy, how does the financing work on these different things? Who are you financing and things like that? So really a little bit about I would describe it as the ecosystem that's making this installation or deployment happen.
Sure, I'll go ahead and start. So yeah, we work with an ecosystem of partners and have in-house capabilities within Diamond as well, where we start from really sitting down with the customer and figuring out what the business objectives for their coverage are. Is it primarily voice, primarily data? How many people are going to be in the building? What are they going to be using the comm infrastructure for? Are there proprietary systems? Are there public systems? So it really starts with us sitting down, understanding the business use cases that our customer and partners want. We then work to design the system all the way from bringing the signal into the building, which usually involves some sort of fiber component, and then designing the cabling, the antenna systems, and other equipment that are needed inside the building for full deployment of the system. We then project manage the installation, integration, setup, and integration back into the carrier network, and/or the deployment of the private network and managed service if that's a component of the particular offering. So we really get involved with the entire ecosystem, the entire process. There are occasions where somebody mentioned orphan DAS systems earlier, where we are brought in to a system that's already been built primarily to deliver a signal source, and we can do that as a product offering as well. But we really have the capabilities to do all of it. On the financing side, I think Greg was mentioning it earlier, we have a flexible financing model as well, depending upon what our customers' needs are, whether that be CapEx or OpEx. We're happy to finance systems over a period of time. We're happy to blend that in with a managed service that's being provided as well. And we're happy to help arrange for bank financing on certain pieces of the equipment as well for our clients that can be combined with either our financing or their own equity financing to come up with the most cost-efficient solution. But we can do CapEx or OpEx, and it really depends upon what our role in that particular deployment is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is Greg. A lot of parallel comments or practices as well at ExteNet. We're full turnkey. We're looking at it from, if it's, even though it's the audience here is more on the commercial real estate side, if it's depending on who's driving the solution or the need, the mobile network operators, is it coverage, is it capacity, et cetera, is it partial, full building, whatever. But when we're dealing with the commercial real estate side of it, it starts from the outside in as well. Is it in a market where we have our own metro fiber? That helps us from an efficiency perspective with getting, partnering with the mobile network operators to get signal source in there faster, maybe more economical. If they're interested in that, that's something that we can leverage in multiple markets. But then it gets into the full suite of the design process, the walkthroughs, the environments there. What are they trying to accomplish? What are the pain points? Into the designing of that, and then the presentation of that, and then we get into the financials as well. But we cover it all as a full turnkey provider, because we want to build it, operate it, own it, maintain it, and fully life cycle it. So we want to be there for them 8 years down the road when things are either end of life, or they need repairs, or they need to make some augments to it. Or they may be expanding their building and they actually need to expand coverage into other areas, or even outside in parking garages or parking lots. So we cover, especially that really bodes well in the sports and entertainment large venues, is where we can also provide a comprehensive solution for both the indoor building itself and then the external environments as well. So, so yeah, that's what we do. And then on the financials, again, not to be repetitive, but whether it's CapEx or OpEx models, and what their budget looks like.
Right. So Tom, I'll ask you, how do you guys see your role in this design installation phase? So how do you go to market when you?
Well, Tim, we're probably not as wide in our portfolio as like what Andy or Greg or even some cases what Bob brings to market. We target most of our solutions for in-building, and that from a design standpoint, we've got tremendous cellular experience, small cell design experience. So we can help from the design infrastructure. Take a piece out of Andy's playbook that he mentioned earlier. Our goal is to either sit down through our sales distribution channels or directly with the end user and figure out exactly what the use cases are. What are the applications? What do they want to use? Primarily when they've gotten, it's been our experience in the past so far, I would say 80–85% of the demand has been data driven, with voice over LTE as maybe an add-on component, but not necessarily a prerequisite, even though the capabilities are there. But typically we sit down and we'll work with them from the ground up, and then bring in partners through our channel that would either provide the boots on the ground for deployment and things of that nature. But from initial design, deal structure, deployment, project management, all of those areas for the portfolio of services or products that we bring to bear, we can help them out with, but would look to our partners for boots on the ground perspective.
Great, thanks, Tom. Bob, can you comment?
Bob, yeah, similar to Tom, as a manufacturer standpoint, we do have the ability for full turnkey end-to-end solution. We manufacture for LTE and 5G the eNode Bs, UEs in some circumstances, the core, other software components that are required for the deployment. We've got support infrastructure, but kind of depending on where we're deploying globally, we have different resource availability for full end-to-end turnkey solution. We would look to partners like Diamond or ExteNet to be kind of a tool in their kit as they look to deploy from a manufacturer standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Okay, another interesting question just came in. So this one's from Kip. I'll paraphrase a little bit. So we all think that this technology and connectivity and wireless is all the best thing on creation. But when we talk to CRE owners, how much education is going on? Do they really understand connectivity technology, whether it's for DAS or neutral hosts or CBRS installations, IoT or security? And how is the COVID-19 epidemic impacting our educational? Are we going to do more, less, or just way more? So really a two-part question. How much education do we need to continue to do in between commercial real estate, understanding their needs, and the technology providers like here in the finance providers today? And then even as it's exacerbated, I'll kind of leave the jury here with the pandemic. So I was wondering if each of you could comment on that aspect of things.
Hey, this is Greg. I'll jump in first and say I think that there's still a lot of confusion out there in the industry with regards to what's available, what's not, what do things do, what don't they do, CBRS and 5G, a lot of buzz. A lot of that's created by the mobile network operators to differentiate themselves or speed to market. But as you sit down with commercial real estate owners, I think it's how does that affect them? And are they in a position to leverage that? Or, is that something that they need inside their building? Will it help them? Will it make them more attractive to tenants? I think that, you know, a lot of this, you know, putting COVID aside, just in general, even before this happened, I think there's a lot of maybe misunderstandings as to what's available, what's not available. And then that kind of transitions into use cases. And well, if I have this, you know, what do I use it for? How much does it cost? Why do I need it? And is it something that I'm going to need today or a year or 2 years from now? So I think there still continues to be a lot of need for education across the board in the whole industry, us as well, to have that conversation, or that type of conversation with the building owners, property managers, as to what's real and what's not real today. With regards to COVID, I think it's, you know, as people, as building owners, you know, are hoping, and as we all do, hope that everyone returns back to what we see with the new normal or whatever that is, and going to buildings. It's you know, the need for wireless communication technology, but also as they are, you know, trying to hopefully entice or get tenants to come back to those buildings. It's looking at their pain points and how they're trying to operate their building. If they come back to 80% or 70% occupancy versus 95 or whatever it was before, okay, well, you know, if there's lost rents or whatever, how do they recoup that? You know, and if you look at the technologies and how they help on some of those pain points versus just coming at them with a solution, then I think that may help them understand the value of some of those things with regards to, hey, the infrastructure, or these are things, you know, these are areas of pain points in your building, you know, whether it's attractiveness, whether it's coverage, whether it's productivity, whether it's security. A lot of that stuff, all those things are answered, or an answer to that, or to solve that, could be some form of a wireless solution, whether that's private LTE, whether that's cellular coverage, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's going to be more discussion around that, but as it impacts their net operating income on their building, their systems, their sensors, whatever else, how else can they leverage things with this technology?
Yeah,
so,
Craig, I just follow up. I wholeheartedly agree. And I think there was a lot of talk this morning about safety and health and environmental conditions. And people are going to be hesitant, at least for a short period of time, I think, coming back into buildings. And I think that knowing that some of these services and solutions are available, most of which are through wireless services, are going to be important to get people back in the buildings.
Yeah.
That'd be my comment. Anybody else want to comment on this one about
I was just
educating commercial real estate and things like that?
On the education, just from conversations I've had with building owners, it is really a wide array. I mean, some are very well educated. They know their stuff. They know the technologies that are available, and some are completely in the dark. They have no idea what they need to do. They know they need to do something, and it's, you know, so there's a really wide spectrum of the education of the building owners. I think you know, publications like Connected Real Estate are a great resource for this education, and these Webexes and virtual trade shows are going to help with that education. But I think we need to, you know, continue to move forward and push ahead and educate ourselves further, and then educate the venue owners as well. COVID-19 and how we see that affecting it, I think it's exposed a kind of a shocking light on how unprepared we were to be working from home and educating from home. A lot of the underserved areas, there are many multi-tenant dwelling units that are completely unserved. There's kids working or schooling from home, and they don't have broadband in the house. People now working from home, and they don't have broadband in the house. So this is something that I think we're going to see more preparation for. We may see some government funding to help expand broadband availability into some of these multi-tenant dwelling units.
Yeah, just to follow up on your point there, Bob, I think it was really interesting hearing a couple of the stories this morning about employees working at home and lack of security, and things like that, tapping into other people's Wi-Fi's, and it was, like you said, I think many of us have worked at home or remotely for long periods of time, but there's an immense amount of people who have not, and it's I see it in my own family too. So it's a new world. Andy, any comments on this, or Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Greg and Bob on that. I think prior to COVID, when we were speaking with our building owners and property managers, everybody was understanding the need to have reliable, quality wireless coverage inside buildings, and they understand some of the challenges around getting that done. It was really an economic discussion of, well, I know I need it, but it's kind of expensive, and how do I balance that cost with the return? I think coming out of this this experience with COVID, it's really going to be a must-have in certainly in any multifamily residential type setting where people are going to be working from home for some period of time. They're going to need to have access to wireless coverage. I agree with Bob. I expect that the government's going to continue to have this be an initiative that they want to pursue. And I agree with the way Greg characterized it. It's really about simplifying the options out there for the building owners and the real estate customers that we work with, because there are so many options out there, and they're smart. They understand the options, but maybe not down to the specific technical issues, and the technology is always changing. There's always something new that's out there. And so we view part of our job is being a trusted partner and a trusted advisor to help them think through all the various options that are out there and find the right one for the business use case at the right price point. And there's trade-offs, as there are with anything in life. And so we expect to have more and more of those conversations going forward. And I guess just one other effect that we've seen from this COVID situation that we're all in, we've had several projects actually accelerate their construction timelines because they've been venues that have been empty. And it's been a great time to get in there and finish some construction without disrupting the tenants that are there. And so, trying to look on the bright side of things, if that's one good thing that's come out of this, is we've been able to actually accelerate some of the projects that otherwise would have caused disruption to ongoing operations.
That's a great point, Andy. One last question here, and then we'll wrap up. So the question is, what are the additional challenges or opportunities of campus environments which combine both indoor and outdoor domains, industrial plants, college campuses, things like that? So maybe I'll look at you, Tom, and then Bob will go to you. Quick comments, and then we'll get your perspective on some of these things.
That's a big question.
Right.
You got about 30 seconds.
You could burn that whole hour on that one, Dean. We can take that question. I'll take good God. I'll speak to our piece of it, right? That I know we can deliver on. The indoor piece. I think of a lot of it is going to be, and I could actually tie it back to some of the comments. I was going to dovetail onto Andy's remarks around the post-COVID deal. Much similarly on campus, I think it really it comes down to really understanding what it is that you're trying to accomplish, whether it's on that campus or it's in a commercial environment post-COVID. I get this tendency, or I get this feeling on the phone with customers over the past 2 or 3 weeks, or even speaking with colleagues, and then especially listening to some of the conversations this morning on the keynotes, is I think there's going to be, for people that aren't used to dealing with all what their true capabilities would be with a very robust private LTE platform, I think there's going to be this overwhelming sense of feeling like they've got to boil the ocean all at once and try and solve for everything. And I think Andy used the term in his description. I think it's going to be critical that you prioritize. If I'm in the campus environment, what is it that I need to do from an operational standpoint as the campus owner or the university itself and then get those priorities built, and then also look, then what are my applications that I want to be able to provide either my residents or my students or my tenants from a real estate standpoint, and let that be your guide for your technology. I think there will be this tremendous need to try and solve for everything all at once, rather than prioritize and really make good, sound decisions. And my fear is if I've seen companies do this before, ones that I've worked for, is that when you try and create that crystal ball or solve for that crystal ball too far in advance, trying to solve for everything, you'll wake up 2 years later and you still won't have anything deployed.
Right. Yep.
Right. So that would be my only
All right, great, Tom. Thanks. That's an excellent perspective. Bob, you guys do a lot of outdoor work, so maybe you can talk about the campus environment, little indoor, outdoor.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick because we're up against the hour here. Yeah, as we've been trying to, ratify and bring CBRS to fruition for the past many years, we've been doing fixed wireless networks in what was called Part 90, which is the predecessor to Part 96 CBRS, fixed wireless access. So we've been doing this for many years, and now we're currently migrating more than 500 fixed wireless access networks in the US from Part 90 to CBRS Part 96. So this is something that the outdoor environment is something that that is kind of our core business, that where we've grown up.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time today. Thanks for the preparation. Thanks for sharing your insights and wisdom with the audience today. So thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank the audience too for listening in. We had some great questions. We've got more, but again, we ran out of time, and I guess that's a good thing. So anyway, thanks to everybody, and I'll turn it back over to the VFairs admin.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Tim.
Appreciate everybody.
Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
See you guys.